It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That's Alan Saunders. And Alan, who is this below us?
This is the voice of the show. Our version of I don't know, the great intro men of all time, Brandon Rossi.
I don't know about that, but thank you for the warm reception.
Listen, it's our favorite part. No matter what content is said after the intro, it's already a great show for the two of us because of the intro, the music, the voiceover. It's all fantastic. Thanks for doing it, by the way. This is the first time that we've gotten to talk, not in person, obviously, but virtually. So thank you for the work that you did for this.
Well, of course, pleasure to be here and looking forward to the show. And, great to talk with such esteemed gentlemen like you two and looking forward to it.
Esteemed.
Where are the esteemed gentlemen? I must have missed that memo.
No, I'm this balances out the YouTube comments. So I'm glad that we got called esteemed gentlemen. And hopefully those people take notes.
We don't get called esteemed gentlemen by the fans.
Never.
By the audience. They know us for what we really are, Smitty. I think that's the problem there.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll dive into more stuff with Brandon as the show goes on, and you guys have seen kind of the format as the show is going to be when we have people riding shotgun with us. But Alan, let's wrap up some stuff newsworthy over the last couple days, or I should say last 24 hours. We briefly brought up the whole Art Rooney talking about the lease thing just because it was kind of like a small nugget tucked into a lot of other information. And then 24 hours later, they hired an offensive coordinator. So that kind of took off in a life of its own and became what the hot topic was. But talking about the lease of the Steelers, obviously, with their stadium, and now, today with the Cleveland Browns potentially looking into their options when that time comes as well. I thought it'd be an interesting point to bring up yet again, those conversations. And because it's not something that I think that just a casual fan ever really thinks about.
Yeah. So, things are getting messy with the Browns, and I don't know, obviously I don't expect Steelers fans to be real up on what's going on in Cleveland, but they've been negotiating to do like $1 billion renovation of their stadium, which opened 2 years before Acrisure Stadium did in 1999. And it's been very contentious. Part of it is politics, right? Like, they want to do a whole reconfiguring of their lakeshore. They want to build a cap over the highway to reconnect the lakeshore with downtown and make it a year-round destination, not just for 10 Browns games. And so there's a lot going on there. But news kind of got out this week that the Browns seem like they're frustrated with that process, have bought a piece of property out by Cleveland's airport in the suburbs, and they may just be going their own route and not kind of taking the public money and going somewhere else. Or maybe if they're taking public money, it's from a suburb instead of the city of Cleveland because they don't want to deal with that process. It's a lot of speculation going on right now, nothing firm, but it's getting messy, right? And I think Steelers fans need to probably prepare themselves for some mess here. We're 2 years behind Cleveland in this cycle. And I don't know what's going to happen, but the ask from the Steelers is going to be big. And I don't think it's going to be unreasonable. We've seen now Cleveland here talking about $1 billion project to renovate their stadium. I know that Cincinnati is discussing renovations in the $400 to $700 million range, and whether that's worth doing or whether they should tear down, what do they call Paul Brown Stadium now? Paycor Stadium, or just start over. Baltimore just got a $460 million renovation deal from the state of Maryland to fix up M&T Bank Stadium. And I got to be honest, I think those three stadiums in the AFC North that are all about the same age have probably held up better than Acrisure is. Certainly Cleveland and Baltimore have. Cincinnati's just okay. They don't really keep it that nice. But I think Art Rooney and then the Steelers and David Morehouse was hired from the Pittsburgh Penguins basically seemingly for this job, right? To go to Allegheny County in the city of Pittsburgh with his hand out looking for $500 million to fix up Acrisure Stadium. And I don't really know that I have a sense of how this is going to go. Art said we want to be here another 10 or 20 years, and that's kind of what he's supposed to say there. But where does the money come from? Who commits to it? How does a deal get made? I don't know. I think things are messy right now. What is the – I see a lot of stadiums, so maybe I have a different perspective, but do you guys get the sense that the public would be behind a $500 million to dump into Acrisure Stadium?
I mean, I think it'd be tough to say, just because, like, from the outsider's perspective, I mean, of course, they're always looking to update what's already there. I mean, I think Steelers fans have always had this perception about how great Acrisure Stadium is, but also to your point, with all of the other AFC North stadiums, I mean, how much better is it than the other stadiums in the AFC North? I'd put it above Paycor for sure, but when it comes to M&T and Cleveland Browns Stadium, I don't know. So I think it's just a matter of what the direct residents would think in terms of like where the money's coming from.
Yeah, what's interesting is like everybody talks about how great Steelers games are. Listen, nobody's going there for the venue itself.
That's true.
I do not think Acrisure Stadium is a top tier venue when you look league wide. As somebody that hasn't spent a ton of time at a bunch of other venues, I still get that sense regardless. It's more about the environment that is created within that venue above all. But yeah, in terms of that, Alan, you were guys talking about like how I think the fans are just going to be like, we don't care. It's not it's not our money coming out of our pocket. Let's get this done. Like, we just want to see a renovated stadium that is up to date and can compete just in terms of the venue itself, not the team or the events going on inside of it with these others around the league. Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting conversation to have for sure. I just, without having my hand on the pulse of the way that these things go, really until you brought it up right before we started recording, it hadn't even been in my mind, even with Art Rooney talking about it prior to, right, when was that, like a week and a half ago
Monday.
or so?
Last Monday. Okay,
yeah, so yeah, it wasn't really something that was on my mind until now, this Cleveland thing. And that I have a follow-up question for you in terms of that. So they've already purchased this land. Like, what happens if, okay, it's been messy, but say that they do figure it out, what in the world would they do with that?
So this land is like an old Ford factory that has been slated for redevelopment anyway. So I assume they would just flip it to somebody else that wanted to develop it or just own the land. It doesn't seem like they've committed to anything, but if you're dropping down money to buy property, I think things are getting pretty messy. One thing I will say is I'm very skeptical of the Steelers getting to that point of mess, just because I think there's a significant commitment from the Rooney family to playing on the north side. That's where Art Rooney Sr. grew up. It's the franchise has played there since 1970. I have a real hard time seeing them, and the other part of it is, some of these stadiums, like you're seeing in Chicago, is talking about moving to the suburbs. The Commanders are talking about moving to the suburbs. And I think the big difference there is in those places, you have like wealthy suburban counties where like there's a county where all the rich people live and it's got a lot of money. And that's why those cities are being those teams are being lured to a different county. In Pittsburgh, we don't really have that. Like, it's not like Westmoreland or Washington or Butler County has more money than Allegheny County does. We also have a regional tax district, which is going to funnel all the money from that 7-county region that surrounds Pittsburgh back towards the city. Now, might they build a place other than on the north side? Sure. Like, I guess they could build it in Hazelwood or, someplace else where they can find a big piece of flat ground near some transport. But really, I mean, Pittsburgh is, because of the geography, really limited. Like, anybody that's ever worked in Pittsburgh that has lived in one suburb and tried to work in another knows how much of a nightmare it is to like try to get from, I don't know, Mount Lebanon to Oakland, or the North Hills to Castle Shannon. Like those are, everything that we do is centered on getting people that aren't in downtown to downtown, and pretty much everywhere else is a horrific pain in the butt to get to. So I don't really see anywhere like that kind of solution coming. I think Acrisure Stadium was built with the intention of it being upgradable as the years went on. I don't think it'll be a difficult stadium to renovate. So I think, as opposed to the Browns, who seem really like they would actually prefer a new stadium and are maybe settling for a renovation if that's the way they go down, I do think the Steelers would be perfectly happy to just put some money into Acrisure, make it a little bit nicer, maybe find a way to get some more enclosed seating. I know that is the one area that I feel like has been a consistent talking point, and that The roofs over the sidelines are not very big. Maybe there's a way they could, enclose part of one end zone. Maybe there's a way they could get rid of those big bleachers and replace them with some enclosed luxury suites, or some, maybe like you've seen some stadiums that have that like real stacked, like very narrow decks that all go up on top of one another in order to get some cover over for some more seats. I feel like from a fan perspective, that's really like the one thing that, like, as a guy that went to games at Three River Stadium, and I don't know if you guys do, the overhang at Three River Stadium was significantly bigger. It was a much nicer stadium to be in, and it was enclosed, right? So when it was cold, when it was rainy, when it was windy, when the snow was blowing sideways, it wasn't nearly as miserable to be in the upper deck at Three River Stadium as it is to be, especially if you're near one of the end zones up there. My uncle's got some seats up in, I don't know, one of the 500 levels right on the end. The wind starts whipping. It's raining sideways. It's a pretty miserable place to be. I think the Steelers are very tied to the outdoor football experience. In fact, Art Rooney said, we will not ask for a dome. But I think finding a way to get some more enclosed seats would certainly be something that was attractive to both the team, and I think the fans would appreciate that too. You see the ticket prices on a cold weather day, or it's not that expensive to go sit up in peanut heaven. It's significantly more expensive if you want to be down in a place where you got a roof over your head and maybe some heat.
Yeah, specifically, can we get some cover just going straight like right over 105, section 105? That would be great.
Just like the Zachary Smith roof, and just right like that.
I would allow them to name that as well. Yeah. Alan, I was born in 1995. Stadium opened in 2001. I think I went to one game in Three Rivers, to be honest with you, and I don't remember it. So, this has been like the only stadium that I've truly known. I was going to ask you, and this is an opinion that I have just popped in my mind. Is there a thought potentially that the Steelers might feel like they could cut some corners on this, though, in terms of the upgrades, just because they don't need to sell the venue? Like, people are going there typically. Of course, other things go on there besides Steelers games, but in general, that's the home of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Just because, again, they're not selling the venue, they're selling the product that's going on inside of the venue more than the venue itself. Or do you think that there is the thought no, we need to be state of the art, we want to be top of the line, first class with the venue that we have?
I actually think it's the opposite. I think some of that happened when they built the stadium. I think if you compare Acrisure to PNC Park, PNC Park was very clearly built with selling the stadium in mind, right? It was built to be a cathedral where people would want to come because of the building. Comparatively, Acrisure, very utilitarian, right? I mean, it's basically just, this is the place where you will come to watch the team that you love, and it doesn't matter what what it looks like.
We got some Steelers news live on Steelers Afternoon Drive.
Always the best.
Steelers are expected to hire Jets assistant Zach Azzani as their new wide receivers coach. Prior to joining the Jets in 2023, he was with the Broncos for 5 seasons.
I would be lying if I knew anything about Zach Azzani other than generally what he looks like. And that's only because, I have some friends that he's coached with in the past, but I mean, in terms of what he's all about, I don't know. Seems like, he's
worked with some decent guys in Denver, but I don't know how good of a developer those guys necessarily he was.
I will say, just on the resume, he is very much not the kind of pass game coordinator type guy that you just want to get into your coaching staff. He's much more like that sort of traditional wide receivers coach hire. I have a hard time coming up with anything to say about there's a connection to Arthur Smith, right? Worked in Tennessee when Arthur Smith was there. Maybe not before he was the coordinator, but when he was there. And so, I don't know. I think that's interesting. But
Also, Mike Sullivan is being retained for sure. Just put out there as well.
Okay. All right. Big news. I don't understand Mike Sullivan coming back. I think we've talked about that.
Yeah.
And here we go on more. Steelers expected to hire Chargers assistant Tom Arth per Aaron Wilson of KPRC in Houston. Now
we started this out with no actual
news, and now we have all the news. Okay. Tom Arth is a guy that I'll be honest, I'm not very excited about. When your last stop was being part of that cabal that was screwing up Justin Herbert, I really am. I'm like, what? Why would you want that guy right now? I don't. And his long. I mean, he was a John Carroll, and he's one of the greatest Division III head coaches, in the country. But I can't sit here and say like he was groundbreaking at Tennessee, Chattanooga, or at Akron, and then he goes to the Chargers and is kind of a failure. I don't know. I don't really see that one. I guess I don't really understand that one. Maybe is a better way to say it.
I'm kind of digesting this. Out of the 3 names that we had heard originally, did they interview any more than those 3 for this role? Or is it just
yeah, there's a couple more. I mean, I know that there were more. I don't know that any names got out there, but it'll be Arth as pass game coordinator, Sullivan as quarterbacks coach, and Azzani as wide receivers coach. I think that's just looking at the names. That's probably the way it plays out. Go ahead, Brandon.
I was just going to say they only offered, or they offered the position. They were set to interview to Matt Baker, Matteo Kambui, and Phil Matus for multiple positions, and they didn't specify what, if it was for this specific receiver coach or elsewhere.
Well, they still have the strength and conditioning. Obviously, they're looking for. We've kind of touched on that. The offensive quality control coach. I'm curious, do they bring in another, because they let go of their assistant quarterback coach, even though they're bringing back Sullivan? Will they fill
right? So they'd have David Corley's role. They would have Matt Tomshaw's role. They might have Glenn Thomas's role, although I assume that would mostly be absorbed by the new pass game coordinator. And then Mattis is a strength and conditioning coach from Boston College. So that's what he would be. And they also may, who knows what else they're going to add to this coaching staff, but that seems like a pretty coherent pack of hires right there, in that it's Arth, Sullivan, and Azzani as the 3 guys kind of involved in the passing game, right?
Yeah.
I was just scrolling just now, and it's AFC North news. But it pertains to the Ravens. Zay Flowers is being investigated for alleged domestic assault. That just came in about half hour ago.
I think I saw that right before we started recording. Apparently that's like been coming down the pipeline for a little bit too. Like somebody that I know texted me and said was wondering if this was even going to get out. So I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah, I kind of wait and see on that. What some of the details are. Obviously, Flowers really important to the Ravens, for sure.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts on this, Smitty or Brandon, on this kind of group of offensive coaches?
Based off like the fact that I thought maybe we could so getting a new OC is one thing, and I was like, okay, maybe under him we do see like just a fresh group that's like very inspiring. I on this though, I'm kind of uninspired by the group, and I wouldn't say that necessarily surprises me. But there's not like a name there that jumps out to me that I'm just like super excited about adding to the staff. It's obviously not status quo other than Sullivan. They are new pieces to the organization. I will say I definitely do like the fact they're actually adding a pass game coordinator, like they're adding that role. Don't know what to make of the person that they're putting into that role, but I do like that it is a role that they're going to have on the staff. Nothing jumps out to me though as like, this is, super exciting, or like I'm absolutely in love with this hire right off the bat. Obviously time will tell if they were good or bad hires, but like on the surface, nothing jumps out to me in a super positive way.
Akron is a pretty tough place to coach, but Tom Arth was 3-24 as the head coach of Akron. So like, I don't know, maybe the defense was just really bad. I don't know, but that's not inspiring to me. Like,
I'm gonna have to dive into this more. Yeah.
I can't say I'm in love with any, and especially because I feel like, and we've talked about this many, this was an opportunity to add some experience to the coaching staff. I think one of the selling points of Arthur Smith is that you have a guy who was a head coach as a coordinator. I think this was an opportunity to add someone with better experience as a pass game coordinator. Obviously, the big name was Eric Bieniemy, but that's not the only guy out there like that, right? Like, Brian Johnson just got hired by somebody for some kind of role like that. There were a number of those other guys that we just talked about that were kind of in that realm as former offensive coordinators that you feel like maybe had a passing game system that might fit. And instead you get Tom Arth, I don't know. It feels like a missed opportunity. Brandon, what do you got?
I think the big thing here is, the fact that they're going outside of the organization instead of hiring from within is something, that I know that they were talking about doing, and they're doing that. But again, it's hard to say about, how successful or unsuccessful these hires are going to be. We can't really judge that, I think, until, once the season starts. But I do think that the fact that they're hiring from outside the organization is a place to start, because I know that that's what a lot of people on the outside were clamoring for. And, again, like Smitty said, time will tell to see if these hires pan out or not. That's really all I had to say about it.
All right, let's change gears here and get to Brandon, because I think that's the fun part of having somebody ride some shotgun with us here, as we have been all week, and will be next week as well, having some conversations with some guests. So if you've guys got a strong feeling about someone you want to come on, I know we had some already, but make sure to leave a comment. But Brandon, you are the first person that everybody hears when they tune into the Steelers Afternoon Drive every day. First of all, what on earth made you want to do that specifically as something that's part of who you are?
So I've always I started doing announcing or voiceover work or whatever. I started doing that when I was in middle school, and I had a little brother that played football. He's now in police academy in Fort Myers, Florida, but he played, and my dad was a coach for one of his youth football teams. And I always said that I have FOMO, fear of missing out. And I was like, I need to be involved somehow. And I get that that's silly for a friggin' 9-year-old football team, but it was just something that I had. And I went up to my dad, and I went up to who was their coach. His name is Tim. I was like, hey, is there something for me to do? I was just looking for something to do. And they just go, why don't you go up in the booth and announce? And I was just like, whatever, gives me something to do. Went up there, fell in love, and just decided that I wanted to make that my career, So kind of an unorthodox. It was kind of by chance, because it was something that I just stumbled upon just by happenstance. And I tell people that I got lucky with knowing what I wanted to do at a young age, and that I've just pursued it ever since.
So you do both play-by-play and you do PA broadcasting. Mm-hmm. And obviously, since you're on our show every day, you're doing voiceovers too. What are the different parts of what you do, and how do they all work?
So they all have, the big thing with the voiceovers, and I got this from talking with Tim DeBacco, the former voice of the Pirates. Mm-hmm. To be a good voiceover artist, you have to be a good storyteller. You have to be a good actor. You have to sell what you're saying or reading on the microphone. Play-by-play, you're also telling a story, but it's live, and the story's different every single time. Every single game has its own different stories, has its own character, circumstances, etc. PA, I always look at as you're reporting what is happening to the live audience, because everyone can see what's happening, at least from an onset point. Everyone can see, for example, that Najee got the ball, but it's just reporting on that. And the big thing that one of my mentors, Dave McBain, the athletic director at my high school, I went to West Allegheny, he always said less is more. And I didn't believe that at first, but now that I've gotten older, I've realized that what he meant was the actions that were on the field, they tell the story, and you're just adding captions to it. And so that's always how I've looked at the three.
Brandon, I have a question, but first I want you to tell me what you think of this Tim DeBacco impression of saying Andrew McCutchen's name. All right, ready?
Okay.
Andrew McCutchen.
The Tim Tobacco one that always stood with me is the and I don't know, I can't do his voice, but it's just the cadence that stuck with me. It's now batting shortstop Jack Wilson, and it was just the way he said it was like very distinctive. Like you immediately and obviously some other guys that have done that, John Barbaro at the Civic Arena with the long drawn out emphasis on Mario Lemieux, but just the way that he did that always just kind of I don't know, it's like an earworm in a song, right? It like sticks with you. It's something that you remember.
Exactly, yeah. And it's funny because every announcer, I think that especially like they have something that carries with you. I think like with Tim Tobacco, the one I always remember was Starling Marte, and it's just something that you pick up. But the what makes it so unique is I think every PA announcer and every play-by-play broadcaster has its own personality, just like how every game has its own personality. Even with play-by-play, when you get someone like a Joe Buck, you're going to get it's going to be minimalist, but he's also just going to add the minimal captions and let the game speak for itself. You get even on color like a Tony Romo, he's going to try to analyze everything that's happening from an offense.
I don't know, Jim.
And that and Chris Collins where here's a guy, something like that.
Brandon, I love the fact that your bio just says probably announcing a game somewhere. A lot of stuff within like the Whippeal and stuff like that. This obviously, I think I would like to think that you want to go higher with this, right? Like, what is the end goal in terms of broadcasting? Like, what level would you like to, like, where are we at on the journey here?
My dream is to be the voice of a professional sports team. I don't care what it is. I don't care where it is. I don't care what sport. I just want to be the voice of a team or a network. Obviously, with me being from Pittsburgh, my dream, my ultimate dream would probably be like the Steelers, the Pirates, the Penguins, something in that ballpark. But that means I have to relocate and be the voice of the Buccaneers. I'm just making up a team off the top of my head. I'm just making scenario up in the top of my head. Then that's just what I got to do. Right now, I'm working my way up. Right now, I do some PA work with Robert Morris. I do a little bit, dabble here and there with Pitt. Used to do some stuff with Duquesne. And I also do a lot of stuff with, like you mentioned, Smitty, a lot of WPIL schools. Right now, I do a lot of the WPIL championships. So the football championships at Acrisure Stadium, I did all 4 of those. I know I'm going to be working the basketball championships at the Peterson Events Center. And I've been doing some stuff with baseball. And I did some stuff with field hockey as well, soccer. So it's just kind of bouncing around right now. And over the summer, I'll go on the road with it's called 3 Ice. They were here back in June at the RMU Sports Complex, and they wanted me to come back for the rest of the season, and I had a blast. And this year we're going on tour again. So we'll be in Pittsburgh as well. That'll come in early August at PPG Paints, or at least that's the tentative schedule. But we're looking at places like, Minneapolis, Phoenix, Nashville, Buffalo, so just from just going all over. Just the goal is to just get my name out as much as I can, get my voice out as much as I can. So that way, hopefully, it leads to somewhere and someone will be impressed with my work and want to bring me on full time.
You talked about Joe Buck, and honestly, I'm not a huge fan, but I always the minimalism, the Minneapolis Miracle call, right? Or it's just just words, right? It's like caught Diggs sideline touchdown, like that's all you need, right? 4 words. I always thought that was a pretty inspired call there. You talked a lot about like your inspiration from sports. What about not from sports, or maybe not from like traditional sports? Like the things that maybe I kind of think about when I think of like voice acting and voiceover work is like Rod Roddy on The Price is Right, or the advertisement when Monster Jam is coming, right? And it's Sunday, and like or like professional wrestling and like those kinds of like it's like a tradition of showmanship, right? It's like back to carnival barking, like way back, and that's sort of where all those things are rooted. But is there anything in that kind of area that maybe you drew some inspiration from?
I'm glad you brought up professional wrestling because, like, I know you had Donnie Football on not too long ago, and he's a big wrestling guy, and I've been a huge wrestling fan ever since I was probably 7 or 8 years old. I even
finish the story, Cody.
Retweet. Like it was to the point where my first event, sat front row, John Cena gave me a wristband. I still have it to this day, and what's funny is whenever I do my PA or play-by-play, the one thing I think that people like to point out is the energy that I bring. So like tonight I go to Robert Morris for men's basketball. They're playing Green Bay, and some of the guys there have told me you call the game sometimes like Jim Ross does on WWE. I'm like, that's where I get it from, trying to carry that excitement that Jim Ross had, from the WWF/WWE whenever he was there, AEW now, and bring that as well into sports and just see how far it takes me. And, so far it's done pretty good. I know that it's not everyone's cup of tea, but, that's just personal preference. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be remiss. This is related to Brandon, but I literally just came across this. Just somebody sent it to me. How about this? Zach Azzani was Antonio Brown's coach at Central Michigan. Coach wide receivers there.
That's the most.
He's actually
thing I've heard in a while.
Brown began attending Central Michigan in 2007 after wide receivers coach Zach Azzani told him he could fly to Michigan and try out for the team as a walk-on receiver, transitioning from quarterback to wide receiver.
Huh.
There you go.
Yeah. So wait a minute. Everybody's been clamoring for Le'Veon to come back. Does this mean with Zach Azzani?
No, hang on, I gotta go write this story real quick. I got the internet on fire here.
I think that as great as AB was, I think that ship is sailed.
Yeah.
So, I gotta say, like, if it wasn't for the crazy, I bet he could still do it.
Oh, 100%.
I bet he could still, like, physically, I would bet on AB first any day of those two guys. But yeah, there's a lot of baggage there.
I agree. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Brandon, we can't thank you enough for riding shotgun with us on today's episode, pal. Tell the people where they can find you.
They can find me on Twitter at Ross_EYE, and you can probably find me at a local high school game or college game because, well, like my bio says, I'm probably announcing a game somewhere. Like tonight, RMU. Next couple of days, I'm at RMU hockey. And I'm sure you'll be seeing me around for some high school playoffs and some other college games as well. So, yeah, just follow me on social media at Ross and then EYE. On Twitter, it's _. On Instagram, it's a . And yeah, just find me wherever you can, and would love to chat.
There we go. High school and college for now. Steelers, Penguins, or Pirates in the future. You got to manifest it.
Fingers crossed.
Or
just manifest it.
Or just WWE. That'd be fine too.
I mean
that would actually be sick. Yeah.
That's
the heir to Michael Cole.
Hey, listen, there's great Pittsburgh connections there right now. I mean, that is true. Wrestling. I mean, you've got the current guys in the job doing a good job from Pittsburgh, and
Corey Graves.
You want to be the next Pat McAfee or Corey Graves? I think we're on board with that.
Hey, I mean, I
hadn't
just
thought
gotta,
about that actually.
I just got to find a way into that business and work my
Pittsburgh's the
way
cradle
up
of quarterbacks and also, for some reason, WWE commentators. I don't know why. It's just
and wrestlers with Kurt Angle in the past.
we've
and
got a lot of wrestlers. No, I mean Bruno, obviously. Going way
Bruno,
back.
Kurt Angle, even
Yeah.
NXT.
Larry Zbyszko.
Like, even
Larry Zbyszko is also a commentator. I'm just all coming together here. It's all coming together.
all full circle.
It always does. It always does. Alan, tell the people they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH, PGH Steelers. Now I'm going to go write some nonsense about Antonio Brown coming back to the Steelers because they hired his old coach. No, not really, but I will be breaking down these 3 coaching moves here as we move through the night.
There we go. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Hit us in the comments with any thoughts about what we talked about, any future questions for the show. Leave us a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. I'm Zachary Smith, PGH, for Alan Saunders, for Brandon Rossi, and myself. Thanks for jumping in, taking another ride with us on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.